Hello and welcome. The session will start in 1 minute. Welcome. We'll just get underway in just a few seconds. Okay, thank you for joining. My name is Paul McGuinness. My contact details are at the bottom if you do wish to get in contact about anything that you've seen today or ask questions. So today, this is a live session on network as a service. So what is network as a service versus, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service? Well, I guess the clue is in the name, where it's all about networking. And this is where users of network as a service will go to a NaaS provider to have network services from them. So that means they do not have to procure, deploy, manage, look after high availability, look after licensing or software or hardware for a network. They can go to that network as a service provider who will basically offer typically a subscription-based service for network capabilities that they can consume on a self-service basis. So that means the full lifecycle management of those services are looked after by the network as a service provider. So all of the hardware, software, licensing, network management, high availability is something that the NaaS provider will do for the consumers of that service. Okay, so what services can you deploy on network as a service? There's lots of different things typically on offer from NaaS providers, and those can include things like virtual routing, for example. So you can spin up a virtual router, and we'll do that later in the demo. You can connect privately into cloud providers. You can do multi-cloud, so connecting one cloud provider privately to another cloud provider. And then you've got these network virtualization features as well that you can deploy typically on a NaaS provider. And those can be, apart from virtual routing, there can be other things like SD-WAN hubs, or there could be a firewalling capability as well. So for example, deploying a Fortinet or a Palo Alto firewall on top of that NaaS provider's infrastructure. Other things that you can do include global connectivity. So from any location to any other location globally that the NaaS provider has. So for example, connecting a data center in Singapore to a data center in New York, for example. And then you can also connect to internet typically as well. And there are also offerings for internet exchanges as well. So using an IX is not for all enterprises or companies, but there are a lot of users who'd like to have that multilateral peering or bilateral peering on an internet exchange, giving them essentially like having a shortcut through the internet. So where can you connect to a NaaS provider? We'll look at this in a little bit more detail later, but NaaS providers are deployed in lots of locations around the world, so you can use any location that they have globally. It's typically any-to-any connectivity. The cloud providers, or the NaaS providers, sorry, also have connectivity to the cloud providers already fulfilled. So that means connectivity to AWS, to Microsoft, IBM, Salesforce. All of these different cloud providers are already connected, so you don't have to worry about that. You can just consume that connectivity that's already in place. And of course, that is private connectivity, not internet-based. You can have hybrid multi-cloud solutions as well, connecting your data centers to cloud in a private way. And then NaaS providers allow you to connect in various different solutions. So you can do data center interconnects, you can connect SD-WAN branches into that NaaS provider. You can connect from your headquarters, for example, through a data center to lots of other things on the NaaS provider's network as well. So what's the difference between a traditional network and a NaaS connectivity? Well, with traditional connectivity, you're typically negotiating a deal for a fixed term contract for fixed capacity of services between one or multiple points. If you want to change that, it's typically a renegotiation for that offering. With NaaS providers, it's a lot different in that you have all of the control that you need to do real-time provisioning. You're paying for what you provision on the network. You're using a self-service portal or you're using automation through APIs, and you're not locked into long-term contracts. So if you want to be flexible, if you're project-based, you can turn on and off services to suit your needs. And everything is contained in their portal or through APIs, so you can just consume what you want through an intuitive type of interface. So the control is with you. No need to negotiate. But how is NaaS implemented? Well, network as a service providers are just deploying their networks inside data centers. The network is owned and operated by the network as a service provider, and they just are operating inside these data centers around the world. So, for example, here at Megaport, we're in over 110 different data center operators, giving us over 850 locations around the world where you can reach us if you want to physically interconnect with us. Okay, so if we look at some of the benefits, like I said earlier, you're building what you need when you need it. So you've got control, you've got access to a nice and easy to use portal. You don't have to be a networking expert to use NaaS. There are lots of good articles, for example, on our docs.megaport.com pages that will step you through the creation of the services that you need. And there's always a solution architect team that includes my team here in Europe, who will be able to handhold you through those initial connections. And then after that, you'll be up to speed. The connectivity is private connectivity on a NaaS provider because it's going over their private network inside metros and between metros and to the cloud. And of course, you've got all of those cloud providers, like I said previously, already connected. They're there, they're waiting to be consumed. You do not have to worry about those physical network-to-network interfaces. Global connectivity, so you can connect from any location to any location and to any cloud around the world as well that the NaaS provider has connected. And you just pay for what you provision. If you don't need a service, you can turn that down. You can change the speed to suit your requirements. So let's look at some use cases. The first one here is about connecting data centers, so data center interconnect. When you connect to Megaport or a NaaS provider inside a data center, we'll give you the locations of the port that you provision immediately. You then take that to your data center provider. They will give you a cross connect, a physical cross connect into our port. That usually takes 2 to 3 days from the data center provider. From there, you can provision connectivity between any of these data centers in 1 minute. So you can just provision what we call a virtual cross connect between these data centers at data rates up to 100 gigabits per second. Okay, so you can do really high capacity private communications around the world. But what if you want to connect to the clouds? Well, that same port that I talked about before, where you've got the cross connect into that port and you've used it for this data center interconnect, you can also use it for other things. You can actually have 100 connections or 100 different VLANs on that port. So that allows you to connect to multi-cloud from that same data center. And if you need resilience, then just deploy in another data center or a separate zone inside the first data center. And then you've got a resilient private connection with high data rates to the cloud providers or multiple cloud providers. So that's hybrid multi-cloud. Now, what if you do not have a presence inside a data center and all you're interested in is connecting two clouds together? Well, you can spin up a virtual router. Megaport has an instance of a virtual router that you can deploy in around 100 locations around the world. And we also support third-party routers from Cisco, for example, for Fortinet and other vendors like Sixwind as well. Again, if you need resilience, deploy 2 devices, and then you've got resilience between the clouds. Now, we've mentioned that that could be a virtual router. It could also be a virtual firewall. So you could deploy a Palo Alto, Fortinet, a Versa firewall device that's running on the NaaS provider's infrastructure. So here at Megaport, you can deploy a virtual edge, which acts like an underlay, and then you deploy your vendor of choice using your own licensing to drop that vendor's image on top of our infrastructure, and then you are 100% in control of the security of that device so that you can encrypt as well and have a firewalling demarcation point between your clouds. Okay, so in this picture, we're just doing cloud to cloud, we're firewalling or virtual routing between those clouds. There's no data center in that picture. But what if you want to do hybrid multi-cloud with some firewalling in between? Well, we can reintroduce into the picture that data center connectivity that we looked at earlier. So you've got a port in the data center, you've got the firewall, and then you've got the multiple cloud connections as well. Everything to the right of the data center is all under your control to provision immediately. So you can do that through the portal or through APIs. The only physical piece you need to do is inside the data center, get a physical cross connect in place, like I described earlier. So all of the rest is very fast indeed. So looking at a quick example here, in this one, this customer has lots of different services deployed. For example, in North America, they're connecting into Oracle Cloud and into Microsoft Azure. They've got a virtual routing element in the US, which they could double up for resilience. They've got East and West Coast data center locations with a port, and then they've also got a port down in Mexico. They've got transatlantic connectivity coming across to Paris, and then they've got multiple clouds here as well, including Google. And then over in Asia Pac, they've got communication links between Europe and Asia Pacific, including a port in Tokyo. And also then we've got Singapore Virtual Edge, which could be hosting, for example, a firewall or an SD-WAN solution. And then we've got multi-cloud and some other ports. So this is the type of scenario that our customers are deploying. They can treat different regions differently. They can connect to different clouds in different regions. So local users can reach the clouds that they need to locally. If they need to get to a remote region or a remote cloud, they can do that as well. Okay, so let's move across and do a quick demo. Okay, so here we are in the Megaport portal, and we've got a map view of the globe showing all of the data center locations that Megaport has already. So these numbers mean the number of different data centers that are already deployed on the network. We can see we've got one pin here. If I zoom in on that pin, this is basically a data center where I've got a port deployed in CoreSite VA1 in Reston in Ashburn. Okay, so we'll come back to that one. So if we just zoom out of that, and I'll just move around the world, let's go and create a port here in Europe. So if we just zoom in here, I'm going to remove a filter that I've got. And here we can see the different locations that we have deployed in Paris. And let's just select one of these. We've got Telehouse here. And we can go ahead and create a port in Telehouse. So all that I have to do to create this port is select the port speed that I need, 10 or 100 gig. I can then give it a name. So this is a port. I select the term. I can have a diversity option in here as well if I wanted to. And then I select next on that and I add the port. So it's that easy. The letter of authorization will be provided after the port is deployed, and then that's immediately available if you cross-connected into that. Now I can go in here and I can connect this port to lots of different things, including cloud, internet exchanges, marketplace, third parties as well. But I'm going to show you a connection, what we call a virtual cross connect, VXC, cross to Ashburn, to that there. So I'm going to create a 1 gig. I'm going to leave everything else as default. And then I'm going to add that VXC. So now you can see if I zoom out, we've got a connection, zoom out a little bit more, between Ashburn and Paris, right? So that's how quick and easy it can be to create high data rate connectivity around the world. And like I said, you can go up to 100 gig as well on those connections. So what I'm going to do is just remove that because I'm going to build something a little bit more complex. Okay, so we're going to remove that. We still got the port here in Paris, got the other one over in Ashburn. But what I want to do is zoom out and we can see all of the European locations here. I'm going to filter that down to just look at MCR locations. And let's just zoom into our Megaport cloud router locations. Here in Amsterdam, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 locations available. One of them is in North Sea. So you can see in this Oudemir data center, we've got port capability, Megaport cloud router, and virtual edge capabilities as well. So let's just spin up a quick MCR in North Sea. So we can create a 10 gig MCR. We'll call that drop in MCR, and it comes with an ASN set as a default, and then we just add that MCR. Okay, so now we can start connecting that to various things. So let's do a connection. We can do a private connection and connect that down to the Paris port that we've got. So VXC to Paris. We're going to just give it a rate limit. Let's do a 1 gig connection. And we're going to leave the layer 3 configuration, and we can do that later. So we can add that VXC. And then likewise, I'm going to create another VXC across to Ashburn, to that port that we've got over there already. So VXC to Ashburn. Again, I'm going to create a 1 VXC. And we can add the layer 3 information later. We add that VXC. So now if I scroll out, we can see that there's 2 links coming off that. So we've got a routing capability in Amsterdam connecting to Ashburn and also connecting to Paris. But what we can also do here is, let's say we want to do hybrid multi-cloud. We can also do another connection from this virtual router, and we can connect this into cloud. Incidentally, you know, we've got all of these clouds here. We also have Marketplace with over 350 partners and service providers available on the Marketplace as well. So if I wanted to connect to Google, I would take a Google pairing key. If I wanted to connect to Azure, I would take the Azure service key from the Express route and drop that in here. We've got other options here as well, including Wasabi. Let's just create a quick connection into AWS. We're supporting all of the connectivity models, but we're going to do a hosted connection today. So we've got all of these locations that we can connect to around the world. But today I'm just going to do a quick demo and connect into the ever popular EU West. One in Ireland. And if I connect it to that, we give it a name. So we give it VXC AWS. Again, now choose from a pull down up to 10 gig, the data rate that we want there. So again, I'll choose a 1 gig. Choose on that. I'm going to skip the layer 3 piece, and then I'm going to just take my AWS account ID, drop that in there so that we know where to direct the interface into, and then I'm going to add that connection. So now we can see if we zoom out of this configuration, we've got the connectivity here. We've got the virtual router in Amsterdam. We've got a port in Paris that we're connecting into. We've got an AWS connection in Ireland, and then we've got a connection across here in Ashburn. Now, for this particular configuration, it might be more logical to place your virtual router in Paris for this situation, but it's just to demonstrate the flexibility you have here. You know, if you're connecting off to, you know, Germany or Scandinavia from here, then the Amsterdam location would then make more sense. So it depends on initial design, but also the network is going to evolve at a later point. So that's really it. All of those services are also visible in here in the services tab, as well as the dashboard that we've looked at. But it just shows you how easy it is to deploy services on Megaport and control all of that yourself. So again, my name is Paul McGuinness, Head of Solutions for Europe at Megaport, based out of the London office. Please do reach out, connect me on LinkedIn if you want to get in touch or have any questions. And I hope to see you on the next Tech Drop-In. Please check us out on YouTube as well. Thank you.